Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and today I have the distinct pleasure and honor of welcoming authors of a wonderful, profound, and valuable book which helps us all in moving towards solving problems creatively. And as I take this opportunity to share the look of this theory of constraints, creative problem solving by Umesh Nagarkatte and Nancy Oley, I also am fortunate to be sitting with both of them here at ITV studio. Let me welcome Nancy Oley first. Nancy, welcome, namaste. And about Nancy, she loves her students and she wants them to be able to solve problems. And now she's retired, but that was the field of psychology. As professor of psychology, you helped many students at Medgar Evers College, CUNY. And you were also director of psychology laboratory at this college, so I'm happy to have you. And it's an interesting combination of psychology with mathematics. So I have the pleasure and honor of welcoming retired professor now, Dr. Umesh Nagarkatte to our studio. Umeshji, welcome. And Umeshji, you have all your life probably been in love with mathematics, and you wanted to inculcate that love among students also. And as former chairman of mathematics department of Medgar Evers College, CUNY, you noticed that many students do not stay with mathematics, and you wanted to find solutions to that problem. So we'll talk about your book in the context of how theory of constraints helped you in arriving at the solution. But let me begin with Nancy first. Nancy, for someone who hears the word theory of constraints, it doesn't say much if you are not familiar that in management as well as at various institutions is very well systematically arranged method and tool to seek solutions to many problems. So help us learn what is constraints.
Okay. I think theory of constraints is about reaching goals. We all have goals in life. Some of them are simple. They are easily achieved. For example, making a pot of rice. But some of them are difficult, complex. For example, if you wanted to have a business and make money now and in the future, that's a difficult task. Or graduate more psychology or mathematics majors, or have a happy marriage. Those are long-term projects. And anything that stands in the way of achieving your goal is considered an obstacle or a constraint. And the theory of constraints teaches us that in any particular point in time, there is only one constraint. There is a constraint, which if you could resolve that, get rid of that, you would improve your situation significantly. There would be a great deal of positive change. There's that one. And the theory of constraints then shows you how to identify that constraint and remove it. The theory of constraints approaches the solution of problems in answering three questions. The first question is what to change? And the question there is what's not working? What is it that you're unhappy with in your current situation? The second question is a little bit more difficult, and that is what to change to? What do you envision for the future? What would a positive situation be for you? And the third question is how to implement the change, how to cause the change. And the theory of constraints shows you how to find the steps that are necessary to make the change and put them in the right order.
Wonderful, Nancy, that's beautiful. You shared all the 3 bullet points that probably defines the theory of constraints. But as you were mentioning, what change, where should be the change, what kind of change it should be and how to implement it. It sounds like anybody would think in this logical fashion, though it's probably not happening. And if I use this example of the way we maybe think about pranayam, so you see that it's a breathing technique, you inhale and exhale, and you see it's so simple. So you find it difficult to be convinced till you have practiced that it is going to be so effective. The same way, if we look at theory of constraints, so what is the problem? Everybody thinks that they know what is the problem, and they have identified whether it's an emotional problem, it's a financial problem, it's an organizational problem. So in your case, when you felt that theory of constraint is offering me something different than what I already know, and if I also add to this, there are some people who we see that they demonstrate that they have innate ability to solve problems. There's some people who take more time. So the second part of this question is it destiny that makes people successful, or there is something which we can consciously develop?
The thing is, everyone has problems, and some problems are under our control. Some problems are in the space, in the area of our responsibility, and some are in the area of our influence. About these, we have emotions and intuition as to how we should go about solving the problems. And there are some other problems about which we have emotion, but we have no intuition, and those we don't solve. Now, in theory of constraints, I learned that the problems are never isolated. They are connected. All the issues are connected, and it showed me, the techniques showed me how we can get to the root of the problem. And once we resolve that important problem, which is also called a constraint, then all other related problems get solved. So it's not individual problem solving, but solving the most important problem. And I have, for instance, if a person has at home, the person has to start with his own problem, whether and without blaming anybody else or himself or herself. They should see what the problems are, and then the next area is the spouse, and then the children and other relatives with whom he has to associate with. So those are the problems of control and responsibility and influence.
Since you mentioned about spouse, so let me go to the psychology expert. Most of the time, subconscious mind of a husband or subconscious mind of a wife thinks that the other is the problem. So wife thinks the husband is the problem, husband thinks the wife is the problem. Now, they have already framed certain notions about the cause or the root cause of the problem, and they also have certain assumptions that there is no solution because he's not going to change or she's not going to change. So now there has to be a paradigm shift which would help them flow towards the solution with open arms. Now, as a psychologist, when you see people applying theory of constraints, because there are so many interrelated issues, so it must be difficult to identify. I mean, when we are talking in general, it is different, but when you're going to the specifics and you get entangled that because there are overlap of certain issues.
Well, one of the strengths of theory of constraints is that it takes into account people's feelings, beliefs, and assumptions. It doesn't totally depend on a logical analysis of every situation. And a great deal of effort in TOC is aimed at reducing the heat in any given situation, in a conflict situation. Some of the assumptions of TOC are positive in that respect. For example, the idea that all people are good, that every problem has a solution, that there are win-win solutions for everything, that every situation can be improved. And there are also techniques within the theory that try to reduce the amount of emotion or conflict between the two people. One of the most important ones is that you focus on the issue, not on the personalities. And you agree that no one will be blamed at any time. You try very, very hard to communicate each person's position. And you take into account their feelings, beliefs, and assumptions. And that tends to reduce the kind of conflict I think you're speaking of.
And sometimes people have impulsive reaction to something that happens to them or something that is being said to them. So in that respect, some people are better at keeping their impulsive reaction under check. So they don't immediately have this outburst, or they do not show that kind of anger which others would show. So how that can be addressed? So what I understand, theory of constraints would be applied with different degree of results by different people because of their inbuilt system or pattern of behavior in terms of the way they react.
Well, I think you've opened up a conversation about personality, looking at human nature. And for me, personality is a total pattern of the characteristic thinking, feeling, and acting that is our unique way. Each of us has that unique way of responding to the environment. And one of the interesting things about personality is that it's pretty consistent, that you have it. If, let's say, you're an aggressive personality, you have an aggressive personality, you will be aggressive at the supermarket, you'll be aggressive at the bank, you'll be aggressive at home, and you will carry that with you pretty much your whole life unless there's some big intervention. So there are a lot of variety of ways in which people respond to difficult problems. For example, in my work, I have students who flunk the first exam, and some of them leave class and never come back. And some of them come to me and ask for help. And others go home and work harder and hope that things will be better in the end. My job, of course, is to encourage the former and encourage the latter and discourage the former. And sometimes I'm successful in doing that. But logic is not something that we come by naturally. I don't think humans are designed to be formally logical. And we spend years of education teaching people how to do logic. So it really doesn't surprise me that, that there's so much trouble.
But what makes me happy, both
Yes.
of you, when you're talking about theory of consent, and let me recollect that we are talking in the context of this book, Theory of Consent, creative problem solving. And Umesh ji and Nancy ji both have been kind to be with me here today. Both of them have written many grants, and they're recipients of many grants and have helped many students, as well as I think in some way helped in the overall organizational structure to work more efficiently with a result-oriented approach. And Umesh ji, continuing with what I was talking to Nancy, many times we feel that this is a problem, and we have in our mind that there is no actual solution to it. So people like Umesh ji or Nancy, or those who are very positive and they talk with this faith that there is solution to every problem, they are fine, but it's actually not going to work for me. That is inbuilt sort of a rigid notion we have, and we take that to be normal. So we sometimes probably live in a state of denial. We don't accept that that problem exists. Have you encountered this kind of scenario where you work in a group for solving a problem and they say, no, it's all right, I mean, people are like that. And so now when you try to show them that this is a problem that the way you have identified, then they would be a little bit uncomfortable. And have you encountered some scenario like this?
Yes, actually I have come across the types of people you have described. Some are helpless and get depressed,
Yes.
not knowing what to do. But if such a person comes to me, I would say, of course, the people have to be desperate to get help. Otherwise, you cannot do anything about it. So, the people who, the person, if the person comes to me regarding who is helpless and maybe depressed, I would say, what is the situation? what are the issues, what's your goal, and then what I would say is no situation remains constant. It is always going to change. Unless you do something about it, it's going to go down, and then you will be more helpless and more depressed. Depression is like a thief. A thief robs you of your valuables. Depression robs you of your vitality. And also we know that the studies have been made regarding effect of negative thinking on the brain as well as on the health. So using the tools of TOC, I would discuss the issues and the goal, and then as a person focuses on the goal and starts dealing with the issues, the person usually finds people who are thinking the same way, and so once that happens, there is no time for depression. One will keep going ahead. And now there are some people who are in denial. For such people, they would negate the problem, but somebody else is concerned and would bring them to me. If such a person is brought to me, the person may not like me, but I would take the person in confidence, and then I would work on work with the person to help the situation. What's the current situation and what you would like to have the situation in the future. And then we have an example in the book, and that tool is called transition tree, and that using that we can help that person.
Wonderful. Transition tree helps in arriving at solution creatively, and how that transition tree is built, that again one learns by understanding more about theory of constraints. And the gentleman who gets the credit for offering this to the humanity, I must say, because this theory of constraints is applicable in some way everywhere, like computers are used everywhere nowadays. And the CEO of Goldratt consulting firm, Rami Goldratt, correct? He refers to the book which we are talking about, Theory of Constraint Creative Problem Solving by Umesh and Nancy G. He says that your book is a potential tool which may be helpful in teaching thinking process to prepare students for life. Now, looking at the constraint of the time and format that we have, Umesh ji, I'm going around the book in our conversation and not into the book exactly. So, Professor Nancy, talk to me a little bit about creativity. Generally, we have confined the idea of creativity to artists. So, if there is a painter or writer, we think that he's creative, and we generally give them a license that they could live in a lost state because it is creative juice that is flowing. So they wouldn't be logical as you would expect others to be logical. Now, this creative solution in the context of theory of constraint, when we apply in the management setting, the business setting where people are dealing with competition, etc. So is this creativity different than that creativity?
That's an interesting question. When we think about problem solving, there are sort of two tracks of thinking, ways of thinking, convergent and divergent thinking. And to give an example, if you were a mathematics student, somebody gives you a homework assignment and it has a specific correct answer, you would use convergent thinking to arrive at or converge on the answer. On the other hand, if you were in a locked room on fire, the room's on fire, and all you have is a hammer and a glass of water and want to get out in a hurry, there is not one particular solution. There are many potential solutions.
Yes.
And you would use what's called divergent thinking. And at least in psychology, creativity is taken to be a process by which you arrive at a solution using divergent thinking. which has two characteristics that make it a little different from ordinary divergent thinking. One is that the solution is unique, and the other is that it is useful. And in terms of the artist, that's a very interesting question. Divergent and convergent thinking are both rule-based. And if you look at an artist, although an artist may seem to be not logical, very intuitive, what you discover is that, in fact, artists are using rule-based behaviors to generate their artistic solutions. So I would argue that, well, for example, your ability to tell the difference between a Renoir and a Picasso painting reflects the fact that each artist has used different rules to solve the artistic problem at hand. So I would argue that an artist may not be willing to talk about thinking processes as the mathematician, or maybe is not aware as the mathematician of the thinking process, but uses it nonetheless. And I would also argue that maybe some artists are more creative than others, using the definition that I said.
Some artists are creative than others. No, why are they more creative? You cannot have exact 2 plus 2 answer from mathematics, but we are sitting with professor of mathematics, so let me advantage of your presence. Creativity to my mind has something to do with being original, and when we are talking about originality, that means it's something, it is there, it cannot be trained. I mean, you can develop certain personality traits or skills. Creativity seems to be, if we refer to it in terms of the amount of creativity, just for the sake of simplicity, then you are given certain amount of creativity when you had it. Which obviously it varies. That problem can be a skill set. So the question for you, Umesh, and you are very much spiritually inclined, and when you were exposed to theory of constraint, this point of view, did it change your way of thinking and approaching problems in order to arrive at solution? And was it empowering in some way that you felt, oh, this is really something which would speed up my process of arriving?
Definitely. Originality is what is required to solve all problems. And in that, just originality is not sufficient. With this logic and these tools which we have used in our life and also described in the book, we can see that the originality can be developed further and can be communicated well, so that we can get in touch with the people who can help us out. And also, if we consider, if we have, say, pearls in our hand, and it's easy, we can string them together. That way we control that. Similarly, original ideas, if they are linked together, we can go ahead and develop them faster. Now, while reading or writing, I use theory of constraints to see the connection from the author's or my own ideas, and see that I can summarize as well as expand, and that has empowered me to write different books, as well as in philosophy.
Oh. In order for us to actually understand what he is talking about, we need to read this book, or there are some other which would give us a better idea what theory of constraint is. But on the face of it, Nancy ji, so Professor, when we talk about constraints, we are actually referring to limitations. Constraint is limit, right? Somewhere.
You can look at it that way,
And
sure.
in general, with many of these motivational speakers, those self-development oriented speeches, one hears that to look at the abundance. So don't focus on limitations, think about going beyond limitations. Maybe they have a different take on approaching your problem. Are you with me on the same page? Okay, so let me to Umeshji, the same setting. When we are talking about constraints, we are focusing about what is it which is preventing us from growing or from embracing abundance. So they say by focusing more and more on limitations, you would remain limited. I mean, that's one way which is being taught, and that is very, very popular these days. So in the context of theory of constraints, you seem to have been successful in reaching to potential solutions many, many times. How does this play out psychologically, mentally? You say you look at the light and expand, but here you are looking at this. This seems to be practical, but for some it may not initially have the kind of attraction.
Yeah, you should look at the top, the cover of the book. You can see that there is a it shows breakthrough solution.
Correct.
And when we are confined, we feel that there is a brick wall around and which we cannot penetrate. Whereas theory of constraints gives you tools to have breakthrough solutions. And limitations, the limitations we impose on ourselves because of some assumptions. So we have to challenge those assumptions and we have to set ourselves free.
So you wanted female students to be retained at CUNY in studying mathematics. Now, a common person would think that this is like it, they don't want to pursue mathematics. What can I do? I mean, I'm just here to teach. But you looked at it differently. How was that, and what made you think that theory of constraint would help?
See, I came across this problem in 1970 when I started teaching in an urban college. I saw that in my math classes there was a lot of attrition of students failing or not dropping out, and not coming regularly and so on. And I saw that same problem was there in the department with other people and also all over the college. Actually, throughout the university and also around the country. Now, I had to start with myself. So, what I did was I introduced technology, I improved my pedagogy and so on. But these were all local solutions. And if I made a presentation in a conference or something, the people would say, oh, this only works for you. It's a local thing. And what I did when I learned theory of constraints was that the students have non-academic and academic issues, and we collected the set of issues of the students and the faculty also, whatever they felt regarding the students.
Quick interruption.
Yeah.
Non-academic issues, as a professor, how would you feel that you are concerned or you can do something about non-academic? Non-academic, to my mind, could be they don't have enough money. Non-academic could be the environment at home is volatile. So parents are not in sync with each other. So there's always some sort of a tension-filled energy at home. How would you address that?
Yes, actually, theory of constraints made me see that the logic which is used to solve mathematical problems can be used to solve such problems also non-academic. And actually, what we consider in TOC, the student as a whole, not just the student in class.
Wow.
Learning a subject. And everything, all that environment, student's environment, helps the student to succeed or fail. So how should we empower the students? That's what we did. And Nancy and her faculty Senate in the college had also discussed the issues, academic and academic, and in our formal training, theory of constraints training, we came to the root of the problem, and we saw how to address the root of the problem. That's true. Students having both types of problems.
Addressing root of the problem is important. Like if you want a tree to be healthy, all that you do is you're taking care of the roots. The same way, Nancy, going towards you with my call it curiosity. So how mathematicians, I mean, somewhere as an expert in psychology, you probably will have a clear idea that you know better about human mind than a mathematician. So there might be some ego initially. Anybody collaborating on a book like this, or even working on a project where the psychologist, this is the realm of psychology, you would think maybe subconsciously.
Good point. I rush to say that I'm an experimental psychologist, not a clinical psychologist. So my inclination is to be experimental and try things, see what happens, have hypotheses, test them out. So I don't come with all of the biases that some of my colleagues do. And we did experience that as we were training faculty and staff at the college, that the people who were engaged in counseling, who had training in psychology, were often sure they knew the answers and were perhaps more resistant to trying new methods than we might have liked.
Yeah, let me add. So when we talked about non-academic issues with students, that kind of problem, if a student is unhappy at home or is coming to class with certain recurring ideas about how back home he's going to face the kind of unpleasant music of interaction between the parents or between the siblings. So what way you would guide them?
Well, it usually comes to me in the form of a symptom. That is to say, a student stops coming to class, or doesn't turn in the homework, or falls asleep in class. And when I get the student in my office, which I try to do, the first question is sort of, what's happening? And we try to identify the obstacles or constraints that are keeping the student from coming to class and so forth. Try to reveal what the underlying issues are. And if time permits, we try to establish how these are all linked together. I think one of the really exciting aspects of theory of constraints is the moment when the student, or me or Umesh, realizes that all the obstacles are logically connected and that they all arise from one obstacle, the core obstacle, the key obstacle. And that if we can focus on that one obstacle and remove it, that the entire situation will be improved. So that
wonderful. I think
how we work on
it is a very exciting space where you get a confidential way of addressing some innermost area where you feel vulnerable, and there is a light coming to you in the form of additional fresh perception that if you look at it this way, maybe there is a door out there. So that this fills us with a sense of joy. And I think that joy through this book is becoming available for wider range of potential seekers of solution who are looking at some additional help. And now emotions are very important in our life. Here is fascinating side of your book is you take into account the power of emotional energy as per theory of constraints. And again, I'm quoting from Remy Goldright. He says, emotion is critical, only passionate people have the stamina to march through the tedious road leading to breakthrough results. Now, both of you, when we look at the method of streamlining emotional energy towards creatively solving problems in the set of organization where people are perceiving the problem differently, in order to apply theory of constraint, Umesh, how was it? Was it sometimes emotionally draining if people are not understanding you?
That's a good question. And if we take people, their diverse views and so on, and if we have this, if they agree with the issues and their opinions regarding how to solve the problem and so on, and considering those their ideas, if we work together, then they don't feel then you are not, you don't feel drained. And also I focus myself on the goal and the activities I have to do, and try to work with other people, and that way whether they like me or not, I tolerate them, I love them, and if the issues are common, naturally people are going to work together.
So, Nancy, what he says tells me that you have to have certain magnanimity in your heart to be able to continuously sustain the sense of compassion and the kind of being nice, being nice approach, and being focused on goal is also important. And I shouldn't say it again and again, but we are quick in diverting our attention to something which appears to be taking away our sense of ego or some disagreements that creeps in communication. So, in order for you to be a successful practitioner of theory of constraints, Nancy, do you think you need some basic minimum, call it qualification, or there will be some people who are qualified for practicing theory of constraints and they will be more successful? Let's say if not qualified, at least because of their different approach, different level of compassion, they will have different kind of results. Some would be more successful, some would be less. Is that?
Well, I think that's sort of true of any new program that comes along.
Right.
Get it while it's hot, because the people who are doing it are very enthusiastic. But what's impressed me over the years that we've worked together is that we've been able to train a huge variety of people to use the techniques. And sort of a little on the side, the technique is being used with elementary school children. I think an entire 6th grade, all the 6th graders in, I've forgotten which country it is now, have adopted it. So it can be used at all different levels and with all different levels of expertise in terms of training.
No, maybe just continuing in the same thread. So there are emotions involved, there is logic involved, there is intuition involved as per the book that you have written, and each one is different in terms of the dominance of some people are more intuitive, some people are more logical. So let us say the person who is more intuitive, he comes up with a suggestion. Logical mind would probably find sometimes it in conflict. So how to overcome this space of conflict?
What I feel is that whenever there is a conflict, there are some assumptions, and we have to challenge those assumptions. We have to be flexible. That's what I learned in the theory of constraints. Not you feel that there is a particular situation, particular solution might work, but still you have to be flexible in working with other people to come up with a different solution which you might not have thought of. And that way it's a global solution and it's not a local solution.
Global solution, not a local solution? Meaning what? Because
I'll tell you, for instance. At home, local solution is only for the person. With spouse and so on, they have different diverse views. So when you work with spouse, naturally you have to be flexible to change your opinion. And that way, what is the goal? The goal has to be kept in mind. The goal in theory of constraints is usually that we have to be successful, we have to be happy. And in that sense, how do we have a happy family? That way, if people work together in the family, then they feel empowered. They feel that they are not alone. And so logic and intuition go together, and that way the book really helps with the tools and so on.
Okay, so we all have our own way of speaking as well as relating, not only relating to people but also to the problems. And so some of us feel that being free in my approach works for me. When I say free, it would mean different for different people. Let's say if there's someone who is more poetic in nature, and we're talking to him about theory of constraints, and then you have some tools also which are thinking process tools, which I find is very interesting. Hear it again, thinking process tools. So Umesh ji and Nancy ji in their book refers to this as TP tools, TP, so TP is thinking process tools. Now you will think that I think the way I think. How a tool can help and change the way I think. So for example, if I am poetically thinking and I wrote few lines for you, thinking is flying free, not tied to any thread, exploring expansion and celebrating life. Now when you talk about TP, there is a reference of some diagram, and when you suggest people to make use of the diagram, so what is the difference in thinking without limitations and thinking with limitations and having a diagram in front of you?
The diagrams one uses only while communicating people the ideas and so on, because it's easier to have something on paper. But otherwise, once the theory of constraints is internalized, you don't need the diagram. It becomes a way of thinking. You become a systematic thinker, and these tools get automatically, they come up when you need them at the right place. And thinking with limitations is precisely not being flexible. Thinking that we only have this, only have that, and nobody is with me, all such are limitations. So in theory of constraints, there is a tool called cloud, which considers all those, which brings out all those assumptions, and then challenging them, you can get a breakthrough solution.
Wonderful. Breakthrough solution, and I recollect somewhere you said you have to be desperate for solution, then only you will, it will make sense to you. And I am reminded that this is that God helps those who help themselves. So even God is not going to help you if you are not willing to help yourself. So theory of constraint won't enter into your territory if you are very close to it. So we probably need to have a sense of openness. But Nancy, let me again refer to what you said in the beginning about theory of constraints, and it is in the book also three major parts. You said what to change to, and how to cause the change. It's very important, very simple, beautiful flow. What to change to, and how to cause the change. Now, generally speaking, people recognize they want change. Whether it is political setup, you want change, you know it. Now, the question is, it is difficult to identify many times what and how that change will be realized. And many people fail in identifying what to change to. In what way your book may help any reader in developing a better thinking in this direction?
Good question. Well, taking question number one, what to change. On the face of it, everybody knows knows what's wrong, and they'll give you lists, pages and pages of lists of things that are wrong. But our book takes you much farther than that. It leads you through various techniques to discover that all of these things that you think that are wrong are all related logically. and that they can all be tied to a single thing. I mentioned that before. The key constraint leads to all of these other obstacles, and that's really eye-opening for people when you do that. It's quite empowering. And that points to then the second question, what to change to. The first point is to change that one key constraint that's leading to all the other problems. But there are rules for doing that. It isn't just your fantasy of what you'd love to see in the future, golden palace of pleasures, nothing like that. It's very rigorously tied to the initial obstacles. There's a logical relationship. It's the opposite. So if one of the obstacles is, I don't have enough money, then one of the sub-goals would be to have money or resources. And again, it's very empowering when you discover that all of these future realities are tied together logically. Very exciting. And that's the second question, what to change to. And then the last question, how to implement the change, follows from the other two. And in that series of procedures, you learn how to identify the essential steps to bring you to your goal and to put them in the right order. And that's the hard part, to put them in the right order. And you also learn how to create an action plan for each of those steps that you could give to somebody else if it's you're manufacturing something and somebody needs to do a process to get you to the next out in terms of plan.
Wonderful. So again, in order for you to reach anywhere, you have to start moving in that direction. And in order to start moving, sometimes movement starts by understanding, by learning. And theory of constraint creative problem solving book is definitely a big in understanding more about it. But Umesh, let's understand from you, taking advantage of your presence here, as we were mentioning about 3 steps. Now, let us learn about how to cause the change with your help, and share with us any experience where you applied it in solving any problem.
Yes, exactly. We have to give a specific example. The example is like when I was going to write the book in mathematics. Now, on a particular topic, students have difficulties, and faculty has also difficulties to explain certain concepts and so on. We list them, and then we see those are called objectives, and that one has to learn the opposite of all those obstacles are the objectives, and we line them up logically, which goes first and what is the next and so on. And that way I linked all the objectives together and came up with the solution and describe it like a story. That way the student or reader would understand the linking ideas and difficulties would not be there.
Linking ideas is very important because sometimes they become real solutions only when they are linked, and that requires creativity, because how you link it and link it in a way that it is practical also, and it can be applied when we sit with learned and experienced people like Umesh and NCG, we learn something. So it is one way to learn from the presence of human beings. But when we are talking about books, the learning is slightly different, Nancy. Share with me, how do you view difference in our learning process when we want to learn through book? So in what way you think theory of constraint creative problem solving can actually in itself, without interacting with any human being, could potentially have some solid way of arriving at solutions?
Well, I have to confess that I'm someone who has shelves full of books on how to do things, do-it-yourselfer. So I'm a big fan of those kinds of books, and maybe biased in my response. But we took great care in developing this book to make it target a broad audience. By that I mean college students, professionals, parents, administrators. And there are different sections of the book that really apply ideally to each one. But we've tried to provide a general, easily accessible introduction to TOC. And one element of it that I think addresses your question most directly are what we call the standalone tools. They're these thinking process tools that we mentioned that can be used immediately by someone reading them to improve their personal situation. And if I may give you one example of that, I spent a little bit of time in one of my introductory psych classes explaining necessity logic, if you don't have to go into it. And then I sent the students home with the task to develop a plan. It's a planning tool, a plan for how to pass my course. And there was one woman who used to sit right there, right in the front, an older woman, and she never turned in the homework, and she stopped coming to class, and I wondered what had happened. I didn't see her till the last day of class. And after all the other students had left on the last day of class, she came up to me, and she said, I just wanted to let you know what had happened. And she told me what had happened. She had had an apartment fire. She'd become homeless with her 9-year-old daughter. She ended up living in a shelter, and the shelter had pretty strict requirements. She couldn't go, she had to be in by 9 o'clock at night, so she couldn't take a night class. Somebody stole her laptop computer.
Oh man.
And she lost her $40,000 a year job because she was at the homeless shelter. And her daughter developed an ear infection and lost her hearing, and she needed to go to the school to deal with that, and so she couldn't come to class during the day. At that point, I was expecting her to ask me for an incomplete or some other accommodation, but she didn't. She said, I just wanted to let you know that the tool that you showed us was the savior for me. It was the thing that allowed me to navigate the minefield of my life and make it through all of this. And she thanked me. So to me, that was an example of how, with very little instruction, somebody could use it very productively.
Wonderful. I'm so happy potential solutions are available, and there are more solutions than problems. I just say it, I don't know from where. I get that conviction sitting with them. Now, Umesh, as we conclude our conversation, being a mathematics professor, and you have done a lot of research work, you have worked with a lot of students, but working with Nancy, coming from psychology background, to weave this creative flow of your understanding in the form of book, what did you learn from her?
I learned tenacity and I learned how to work together. And basically, we are interested in helping students. That's our common goal. And she can see the psychological side. And for me, I need them to be proficient in mathematics, so they have to learn what necessity condition is, what sufficient condition is, and so on. And then our common issues we discussed. We had the formal training in TOC, and that's why we could see how the different steps could be matched, and where she can come in and where my help would be there. So
wonderful.
we
So
complemented ourselves.
Yes, thank you, Umesh. And same question to you, Nancy. What did you learn from Umesh coming with mathematics background in the context of theory of constraints?
I think I learned patience and to give love to a situation, which is sometimes very difficult, and the value of logic. We had many debates about necessity logic and sufficiency logic. I think we finally came to some agreement about it, but there were a lot of intellectual conversations, and we could spend an hour just going through one tool, one little problem. So it was very intellectually stimulating, and I think the outcome was very worthwhile.
Wonderful book, Theory of Constraint, Creative Problem Solving, which brought both of them to our studio, and it inspires us to see differently and do not get bogged down by limitations, and see what tools are available so we apply them and move higher. And it is our duty as human beings to do the best that we can in whatever circumstances we are placed. there is always a way out. That conviction comes to us with the presence of Nancy and Umesh. Thank you very much, with lots of good wishes to both of you. Thank you very much for being with us. This is Ashok Vyas.